Weapon-mounted laser rangefinders versus handheld range-finding binos with integrated ballistics. I get the question all the time about where I'd spend my money and where each of these items makes sense. So in this video, we're going to take a deep dive into where I feel like both of these platforms excel, what their strengths are, maybe what their weaknesses are, and where you should be using them. Now, if you like the sounds of that, stick around as we take a deep dive into weapon-mounted laser rangefinders versus handheld. Now, you think about what it takes to put a round downrange on a targeted distance. We have to know the distance, so you got to have a laser rangefinder. It'd be good to know the wind, so we need to have some way to measure the wind, maybe a handheld meter. Ideally, you'd have a way to take weather station information, temperature, humidity, density, altitude, and then plug that all into a ballistic calculator, likely an app on your phone where it spits out some kind of number. And don't forget, we have to have the information for our bullet and our rifle correct to have any chance of a solution that makes sense out at distance. There's a lot to the process, but I tell you what, as we move forward, the precision rifle space is getting a ton of tools out there that are extremely affordable. Tools like this Tango Enos Fire 4000 weapon-mounted laser rangefinder. This thing's on the market there for something like $1,400. It's going to allow you to range a target, input weather information through the app, input wind, and then when you range that target by pointing your rifle at it, it's going to spit out the data you need to put a round on it. Another platform very popular would be, say, these Vectronic Vector X laser range-finding binos. These are fairly new to the industry, but in a similar fashion, these are going to allow you to range a target and then use the integrated weather on this tool as well as the ballistic solution that you input through the app to spit out the number that you need for elevation and windage. Now, both of these tools are pretty new. I tell you what, both of these tools are great for the precision rifle shooter, especially the practical shooter, where you're out engaging targets at unknown distances and you're probably on the clock. So with that, I feel like both of these have a place in your arsenal. There's a couple of different reasons why. So what I'm going to do in this video, first off, is give you a look at the gear we're running. Then we're going to move down to the 100-yard line, where I'm going to show you the process of setting up the Tango Enos Fire 4000 weapon-mounted laser rangefinder, as well as the Vector X from Vectronic. We're going to take a look at how you go through, input that weather information, your bullet information, etc. Then we're going to push out to distance. So we're going to shoot a couple of different places, say from 300 out to about 800 yards. And what I want to do is just give you a look at how each platform works when I put rounds downrange. And then at the end of the video, we're going to wrap up with my summary on where each platform makes sense and what the pros and cons are. Now, if you like the sounds of that, stick around, but I've also got to ask for your help. If you enjoy this kind of content, help me out by subscribing. If you're watching my video and you're not subscribed, go ahead and click that subscribe button, and I appreciate each and every one of you that are subscribed and returning once again. I tell you what, every time I get a view and a new subscriber, I find it extremely encouraging, and it helps me grow this channel. My goal is 100,000 subscribers, so help me get there. Again, thanks for watching. Let's talk about the gear we're going to run in this video. So my thoughts for this video would be around, say, general purpose rifles, DMRs, SPRs, where we're engaging, say, torso type targets out to 800 to 1,000 yards. That seems to be the space where a lot of my viewers enjoy shooting. That's certainly where I enjoy shooting, and I find both of these tools to be very practical for that application. Now, the bulk of the video is focused on the rangefinders and the solution, but obviously I have a rifle, and I know you're all probably curious about that. So the rifle we're going to run is going to be my Mark 12 Mod 1 clone or Vibe. The lower on this rig is going to be from Rifle Armament. They're a longtime supporter of the channel. This is going to be their Mark 2 lower with their new 2-stage trigger in it. So this 2-stage trigger is pretty slick. Comes to market about $100, and I'm finding it to be very nice for a precision trigger. Clean break, short reset, and no over travel. So I've got quite a few rounds on this now, and again, I'm very happy with it. The other thing I like about this Mark 2 lower is the ambi bolt release. You just slide down the lever right here, boom, chamber around without disturbing your position. Now the upper here is going to be from Centurion Arms. This is going to be their Mark 12 Mod 1 upper with the Knights Armament RAS rail. So very much a Mark 12 Mod 1 Vibe rifle. Is it clone correct? No, but it definitely gets the job done for me. Suppressor on this is going to be from Allen Engineering. So shout out to them for sending this out, helping me complete this Mark 12 Mod 1 rifle. I find this Allen Engineering AEM 5 can to be extremely quiet, especially when it's paired with the Griffin Armament Enhanced Gas Pocket Bolt Carrier Group that's in this upper. Now, if you're not familiar with this bolt carrier group, but you're shooting suppressed ARs, you've got to check these out. So you think about suppressed ARs without ears. Yeah, you probably can get a round or two before you get that kind of ringing in your right-hand ear, that port pop. This enhanced gas pocket bolt carrier group really reduces the amount of port pop you get. It does not vent gas out the right-hand side, it vents it to the left, and it delays how the bolt unlocks. So no joke, I'm able to shoot this rifle without ears, and it's very comfortable. And I believe a lot of that certainly is a quiet suppressor like the AEM5, but I think a lot of it is attributed to the Griffin Enhanced Gas Pocket Bolt Carrier Group. So that's going to be the rifle setup that we run on top of an MDT single pole bipod with the PR Shooting Solutions pod knobs. Now certainly to use a weapon mounted laser rangefinder, we have to have an optical solution on the rifle. And for me, I find a rifle like this out to 800 yards pairs very well with an LPVO. And in this case, I'm excited to announce a new supporter of the channel who sent out this EOTech Voodoo 1:10 mil optic. That's going to be Brownells. So guys, Brownells is huge. I really appreciate their support. I know you're all shopping there. If you want to save yourself some money, make sure you use my code MULLET. That's going to give yourself 10% off or free shipping, depends on the product, and it will give me a bit of a kickback that I can use to continue creating new content for you. So the optic you're going to be looking through when I run the trigger camera is going to be the EOTech Voodoo 1:10 mil optic from Brownells. Thank you to Brownells again. Make sure you're using code MULLETS. It's going to be in the Night Force single piece 34mm mount with their accessory rail on top. That's where the Tango Fire 4000 is going to be mounted. You have to have a solid optic mount setup to be able to run a weapon mounted laser rangefinder. These have to hold zero. If you're not familiar with the concept, you actually zero the weapon mounted laser rangefinder to your optic. So you can't have your optic shifting zero, you can't have your laser shifting zero, or else your data will be off. Now the Fire 4000 weapon mounted laser rangefinder, this thing's pretty nuts. It's been out for a couple of months. I've had this quite a while now, quite a few rounds on it, and I'm happy with it. Comes to market, I want to say in about the $1,400 range, so very affordable. Has applied ballistics in it, so you can actually load weather through the app. I've been using AB Boss. I haven't swapped over to Quantum yet. Load your weather in, range the target, load in your bullet, and boom, it's going to spit out an elevation and a windage hold. What I'm going to do in video here today is show you how accurate that is on this rifle once we have our data plugged in correctly. Now, what ammo are we going to shoot through the rifle? Well, shout out to Phantom Defense, who sent out the 77 grain OTM load. You think about a Mark 12 Mod 1 like this, pairs perfectly with a 77 grain bullet, and that's what we're going to be running here from Phantom Defense. Now the next piece of this puzzle, certainly we have a rifle with a weapon mounted laser rangefinder here. You're probably wondering, what are we running for handheld? Well, let's take a look. So the handheld unit I have here is going to be the Vectronic Vector X rangefinding binos. Now, Vectronics sent these out to me. These are demo units for me to use here on the channel and create content with you. I've been running these now for maybe a week. They actually just came in, but enough that I'm familiar with them. And I tell you what, I am super impressed with what these are. So the unit that I have here is actually a 12 power. It's a 12x42. Integrated into this is going to be a weather station with applied ballistics, just like the Fire 4000. This unit also, it's going to have the ability to store all kinds of information, different gun profiles through the app that you can select, different bullets, you can save weather, you can create range cards. I mean, this thing is actually nuts. The other thing you can do with these, they actually have range extenders that you can thread in, which I'll do here quickly. So basically, with this range extender, you can go from 12 power on this unit up to 17, and all they do is just thread in right here. So these are an additional accessory. You can get them, so Euro Optic is who actually sent out this package. But you can get the Vectronics with the range extenders, the whole 9 yards, say from Euro Optic. And these things are actually nuts. So they actually have a reticle in them for 12 power and for 17 power. So not only are these range finding binos, with that reticle, you can also use these to shoot long range. You can measure things, measure misses. Maybe you're shooting as a team. You can correct, make spotter corrections for your shooter. So far, I'm really impressed with these units. Right now, I'm running on the CR123 battery, but you actually can run an 18650 in these. I tell you what, these are pretty nuts as far as handheld range-finding binos go. Now, my plan from here, let's move down to the 100-yard line. Let me show you what it takes to configure each of these. Then I'm going to move out and shoot from about 300 to 800, give you a couple of scenarios, give you a look at how each solution performs, and at the end of the video, we're going to wrap up here with my thoughts around pros and cons for each. Let's start by taking a look at the setup process for each unit. Now, I'll talk about the weapon-mounted laser rangefinder first, followed by the binos, but the process is pretty similar. So the first thing that I'm going to do is get my rifle zeroed. So I like the 100-yard line. I'm going to fire a group. So in this case, I fired 10 rounds of my Phantom Defense out there on the orange dot. And I see that group landed right at 2 MOA. So not spectacular, but for what this rifle is, kind of a designated marksman with an LPVO, that's going to be just fine for the shooting we're going to do in this video. So get a good zero on your optic. Then, when it comes to your weapon-mounted laser rangefinder in particular, we need to zero the weapon-mounted laser rangefinder to the optic. That process is pretty easy. The first thing we're going to do is just measure the height of the laser over the center of the scope. So for example, this one is 2.75 inches. Now remember that because we're going to use that to zero the weapon-mounted laser rangefinder to the optic. We want those to be parallel to each other. Now, 2.75 inches is roughly 0.75 mils at 100 yards. So we do 2.75 divided by 3.6, that gives you 0.75. So when I look downrange and turn on my laser, my visible laser, which is on, you can see on the license plate, which has a tip in the daylight. If I go over onto the paper, you can't see that laser. You need something reflective, such as a license plate. But now, I want to move that dot up until it's 0.75 mils above my center dot. So I believe that circle is 1. So something like that. To bring it a bit to the left. Something like that. So there we are, pretty zeroed up with our weapon-mounted laser rangefinder. So we'll turn off the laser, and we're good there. Now to use that, we're just going to make sure we're at our zero, point at the target with the reticle and the optic, and then laze, and then boom, that's going to give us the range to the target. Now how do we set up the data within the weapon-mounted laser rangefinder? Well, this Tango NOS Fire 4000, understand it's now paired with AB Quantum, but I'm actually still using the older AB Boss app. So the first thing I want to do is go in and load my environmental. So I have just a Caldwell Wind Wizard here for a couple reasons. One, it's going to give me a temperature. So right now it's showing 56 degrees. So let's go into our weather. And I'm going to load in 56 degrees. Pressure, we can pull that out of the phone. Humidity, I know it's about 30%. And then we will load in wind, which I'll do that on the main screen here. So let's go back to the main screen. I know my wind, when I run my wind meter, it's been running about, say, 6 to 12 miles an hour from the 3 o'clock. So I'm just going to load in an 8 mile an hour, 3 o'clock wind. Let's update pressure, so it pulls in 26.00. And now let's go load the weapon profile to make sure we know what we're shooting. So you can see I've already got the Mark 12 77 grain Mark 262 in there. So for this one, given this is also an AB product, I can go into the bullet library, select this 77 grain Sierra Match King, load in the custom curve, we're good to go there. All the bullet information's in. Velocity, so while I was zeroing, and I got that 2 MOA group, I was running that FX True Ballistic chronograph, and I got an average speed of 26.16 for velocity, so I've got that loaded in. Sight height will be from the center of the optic to the center of the bore, 2.75, that's critical. Twist rate on this rifle is 7 inches to the right, so that's loaded in. Now we have, let's make sure that profile is active, so that is the active profile. I can go back to the main heads-up display and see all the information across the top. And now just to confirm that the rangefinder is seeing the data, let me just laze that target. Pulls in 100 yards. So now I'm confident that the data we just loaded for the weapon-mounted laser rangefinder is in the unit. And when we start to shoot out the distance, it's going to have this information behind the data for each shot. Let's take a look at the setup process for the Vectronic Vector X laser rangefinder. So pretty simple in that we need to know our velocity information out of the bullet as well as our weapon setup. So there's a couple ways we can do that, but they have an app that you can actually pair with the laser rangefinders. So the first thing I'm going to do is just go into gun profiles. You can see I've already got the Mark 12 loaded. we'll go in there and take a look at that information. So bullet library, I actually like this. This is the Applied Ballistics Bullet Library. So you can go into there and choose the bullet that you're shooting. So for example, I'm going to go into the Sierra 77 grain Match King, pull in that custom curve profile that will shoot out to distance. You can see that pulls in all the information for the bullet, diameter, weight, length, etc. Then we'll scroll down here, muzzle velocity. Remember the number we got out of the rifle was 2616 for the average. I'll plug that in there. Zero range, 100 yards. Sight height, 2.75. And then everything else will be zeroed out. 7-inch twist. We're good to go there. So we can confirm that. And our weapon is loaded into the Vector X laser rangefinder. Now, other things you can do in this app, we can go in and see our environment. It'll pull in current conditions. Here, you can just verify what you're seeing downrange with reality. We can also go in and just confirm that the rangefinder is actually paired. So let me just go over and we'll range 130 yards. You can see that's pulled into the app just like it is there in the laser rangefinder. Now, the other thing we can do, we can actually go into the settings in the laser rangefinder, and we can just confirm that we've pulled in the weapon profile. So there you can see my Mark 12 is loaded. That's what's flashing. So that's going to be my active profile. And we can go over and just check out our environmentals. So if we scroll down, you can see my wind. I have a 3 o'clock wind. It's measuring something like, there's 6 miles an hour. Earlier it was measuring up to 12 miles an hour, so it's kind of gusting. So maybe for the purpose of this, I'll plug in that first number at 6 miles an hour. And we'll move the top down to like a 10. So now that's going to give me a window of wind within the output data from the laser rangefinder. Now with that, we're ready to push out to distance. As you can see, this unit's actually going to automatically pull in temperature, pressure, humidity, all of that kind of information using its onboard sensors. So that actually makes it pretty slick for long range shooting. But with that, we just range a target now, and it'll give us the data to hold over. Now that we have everything set up there at the 100-yard line, why don't we push out, start engaging some steel at distance, just to see how the two units compare. So I've moved back and put up two targets. So on the left, I have a 2/3 Zipzik, which is 12 by 20. It's a great DMR style target. And then on the right, I actually have a new target from Echo Gong. It's a 12-inch stop sign shaped target. And they market this as being extremely loud and ringing very clearly. So it'll be interesting to hear how that target sounds when we engage it. Now my plan at each distance, I'm going to start with the binos. We're going to get a range on it. We'll use the data out of the binos, shoot that for a little while, and then I'll swap over and use the weapon mounted unit to compare the data that's coming out of it. So with that, you can see I've got the binos pointed at the base of the target there. Let's just go ahead and range. That gets 388 yards, which is 2 mils. And it's calling for 0.5 to 1 mil of wind. Feels pretty stout, so I'm probably going to start by holding right 1 mil. Okay, 2 mils of elevation, right 1 mil. Back. 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 Let's try the 12-inch gong. Back. Definitely has a different sound. Now let's compare it to the Tango Enos. So with it, I'm just going to favor bottom of the target. 389, it's calling for 2 mils and right 0.8. Remember, this one only has an 8 mile an hour wind, so it literally split the difference of the Vectronic, which is kind of cool. So let's just put a couple more rounds. Ooh, I think I pulled that one. Back. Back. Impact. So pretty solid right here at 388. We push back a little bit further into more of a natural or practical type position. Now I'm going to shoot off of these rocks, which is one of my favorite spots to shoot. But what you can tell is there's not a great spot for me to get in here with the tripod. Say you're in a match or something, or out hunting, and you can only take a shot off of these rocks. Not a solid spot for a tripod. So with that, I've separated out the Vectronics, and we're going to range with them separately off of a bag right here. Now obviously I'm able to use my phone, which you're viewing through, as a screen, which is slick. So we'll go ahead and range the target. 655 yards is calling for 5.5 up, and from 1 mil to 1.7 or 1.8 right. Feels pretty stout, so I'm probably going to start 1.5 right and up 5.5. Now, for shooting, I'm going to move the Vectronics back behind me so that hopefully you can see a little bit of trace. But the important thing to note here is, in a position like this, you got to get your binos very stable. And I'll show you the difference on the weapon mounted here in just a second. But if you're going to separate the binos out, get them stable, get them off of a bag, find some way, because if I just try to hold these, I mean, you can see, even bracing off the bag, how much movement there is in my hands, versus if I set it down on the bag, much more steady. So let me move the Vectronics back. Let's put some rounds out there. It's worth noting the target I put up there on the right is a full-size IPSC, and then the one on the left there is a 2/3 IPSC. So let's set up, put some rounds out there, and see how the data runs. Alrighty, so here we go. What you saw right there is a little bit awkward to get the rifle into position. So after I range, then I have to build the position with the rifle to be able to shoot. So here we go. Let me turn on the SG pulse. So 5.5 elevation, right 1.5. You can see that's that full-size IPSC with the first round. Off the left edge. Pat. Pat. Let's try the 2/3. That low right corner. Right edge. Impact. Let's load up some more. Now let's assume we're going to shoot with a weapon-mounted laser rangefinder, the same course of fire. So I'll power up the Fire 4000. In this case, I would already be down on the rifle. I'll get into position, point at the target. I'm just going to aim at the base. 659 calls for 5.6 up. And we know right, something like 2 mils-ish. Pat. Pull off the right edge. Pat. Let's try the 2/3. The right edge. Left edge. Impact. Impact. So there you can see the elevation's pretty solid. I may need to update my windage to be more realistic with what I'm seeing out there. There's a bit more wind, so it might have picked up speed. Let's just put a couple more on that full size. That's pretty fun. So with that, let's push back a little bit further. Why don't we just run a mock stage out here with each setup. First up, I'll start with the weapon-mounted laser rangefinder. I've moved back from where we were. Still have the full-size IPSC on the right, the 2/3 on the left. My plan is literally just going to be lay down, go prone, shoot those targets as quickly as I can with the rounds in this magazine. So with that, give myself a little countdown. 3, 2, 1, beep. Here we go. Shorten the bipod. There we go. Let's range that target. 826 is calling for 8.6 up. Right 1.8. 8.6 up. 8.6 and right 1.8. Full size IPSC. So that was off that left edge. Let's call it 2.4, 2.3. Back. Left edge. Right edge. Back. Back. Left edge. Pat. And pat. So, not terribly hard. Now let's try it with the binos and see how it runs. I did extend the bipod out to a random setting so that that's not preset. With that, we'll get down, engage the same full-size IPSC with the rounds in the magazine. 3, 2, 1, beep. All right. Start the magazine. Now, I've had pretty good luck in the past using my bag like on top of the optic like this. And again, the phone makes this way easier. .24, 8.6 up, and that's calling for 1.4 to 2.5. Let's say it's a 10-mile-an-hour wind, so let's go that 2 mils. So what was my elevation there? 8.6 at 2 mils. 8.6 at 2 mils. 8.6 at 2 mils. High and left. Back. Back. Well, we had a good run there with consistent wind, but as you can see, a little bit of a different setup there to be able to run the binos for a setup like this. So check this out. One of the coolest things about the Vectronic Vector X range-finding binos is you can actually get range extenders for them. So the model that I'm using right here is 12 power without the range extenders. But when you install these, this unit's going to go up to 17 power. So right now, let's just take a look at what we're seeing downrange. And you can see my target array there in the center. And if I pan over, I'm going to put that 12x mil reticle right there on the targets, kind of between them. And then we will use that to compare once we install the range extenders. So all they're going to do is just thread in the front here. There we go, 17 power installed. Now let me transition over, and it looks like I need to refocus. Something like that. So basically, what I'm measuring between my targets, let me just make this easier. I love the reticle in these. Basically, I'm measuring 1, 2, call it like 2.8 mils between the two targets there. You can see the 2/3 IPSC is directly above the center line with the full size there just shy of that 3 mil hash. So just for comparison, I'll pull out the range extender. Let's go back just to give you a look at the 12X. Now these range extenders are pretty slick because I'm able just to carry them on my belt. I've got this battle belt that American Operator Gear sent me, and the range extender pack installs right there, no problem. So kind of easy to keep up with. Now let's just swap over, refocus, and you can see how much smaller my targets appear, but check that out. Still showing just shy of 3 mils there between the targets. If I zoom in on the iPhone image, you can get a much better look there. So where those range extenders make sense, maybe you're wanting to do some longer range shooting and you want to be able to spot those impacts, having the ability to zoom in a bit just by installing these items. I think these cost about $600 in addition to the rangefinder, but they're pretty slick. They're easy to keep track of. Again, I've got them here on my battle belt from American Operator Gear, and then they just thread in and out. They're not terribly heavy, but when they're installed, this unit does become fairly nose heavy, so definitely want to run these off of a tripod like I have here. Well, there you have it, a look of a weapon-mounted laser rangefinder and range-finding binos, 100-yard setup, getting the data loaded into each of those units, and then performance out to 800 yards. Now you gotta let me know in the comments down below, where do you see each of these units making sense? What did you see in this video that you find interesting for the weapon-mounted unit? What do you find interesting about the handheld unit? Maybe you're using one or the other. I'd love to hear your thoughts around where you're using them and where they make sense. Now while you're doing that, let me chat about my experience and kind of where I see each of these making sense. Now first off, we moved down there to the 100-yard line where we zeroed the rifle. We saw this Mark 12 shoot, say, 2 MOA group there with the 77 grain ammo. And for what this rifle is, shooting man-sized targets out to 800 yards, that's just fine. And we saw that perform well out to distance. So we got the rifle zeroed up, LPVO, that's the same process that you're used to. The next thing we did was work with the Fire 4000, the weapon-mounted laser rangefinder. We used the visible laser and adjusted that down to pair it with our reticle. So we ran a parallel zero on the laser to the reticle in our optics, so that all I have to do, point the rifle down range it, and boom, everything else happens. So that zero process, once you understand it and how to do it, it's very easy. But that is something to keep in mind with a weapon-mounted laser rangefinder. There is the zeroing process that you have to do. You don't have to do that with the handheld unit. So the handheld unit, basically you would just kind of point it down range, put the crosshair on it, and you're good to go. The next thing we did with the Fire 4000 was load the information for the load. The bullet information, I ran that custom curve out of the AB Boss app, put in my velocity at 2616, height over bore at something like 2.75 inches, pulled in weather out of my phone and out of the handheld Caldwell wind meter. I measured something like a 8 mile an hour to 10 mile an hour wind from the 3 o'clock. Loaded all that information into the app, paired it with the Fire 4000. At that point, the Fire 4000 was ready to use. Then we swapped over and we worked with the Vectronic Vector X handheld range-finding binos. And again, the zero process isn't there. So all I had to do on these was load in the information for the bullet. So here I was able to use the app these pair with, go in, also applied ballistics, and pull in the custom curve for that 77 grain bullet, put in my velocity and my speed, and then sync that over to these units. From there, the units have onboard weather, so they're able to pull in their own weather information. So I could actually double check the information out of my phone that I put in the Fire 4000 with the handheld unit here. So pretty slick in that really all you're doing in this unit is your bullet information. You can create multiple different profiles within the app that these units can store. You can scroll through them and select them, but for today, all we were shooting was that 77 grain load. Then we moved out to shoot targets at distance. First off, we set up the tripod. We were in the ballpark of 400 yards, say 388 yards. What I wanted to do there was just give you a quick look at kind of how the two units perform. So off the tripod, I was able to use the Vectronics to range that target. Now, off the tripod is important to note. Handheld rangefinders like this, you gotta be steady, especially when I put the range extenders in here, the 17 power. Little bit of movement here is a lot of movement through the image or through the unit. So in order to use range-finding binos like this, you have to have a steady platform. So throughout the video, you saw me either use the tripod or use some kind of bag to rest these on to be able to range out to distance. So that's the number one thing to keep in mind with a range-finding bino that maybe a weapon-mounted laser rangefinder does for you. So typically, with your rifle like this, you're gonna be steady. Your rifle, you're probably gonna be pointed at the target. You wanna be steady to take that shot. Well, guess what? Your rangefinder is attached to that and is just as steady. So something to keep in mind right there, a weapon-mounted laser rangefinder like this, for me, it's pretty easy to get steady versus maybe the handheld unit like this. You have to either use a bag or a tripod. It's not impossible. These Vectronics actually have a tripod plate they come with, allows you to put it right into the ARCA and get them steady. Now what we saw there at 388 yards, the data they spit out was identical. I want to say it was right at 2 mil hold for elevation and about 1 mil of wind. We connected on the 2/3 Zipsic, as well as that 12-inch gong from Echo Gong, which sounded pretty cool actually. Definitely sounded different than the Torso did. But there, you saw me range off the tripod, move up and shoot off the tripod, really with no problems. Then we moved back here to the rocks, which is at about 660 yards. And these were a bit of a different position that was kind of challenging, say, for the handheld unit. So off the rocks, I was able to set my rifle up, range with it. Again, I was very steady with the rifle. Not a great place to put a tripod right here. So what I did here was use my rear bag sitting here. So this is just a Fulcrum rear bag. So Fulcrum is a new company. They're out of California. You can find them on Instagram or through my campsite bio if you're interested. But basically, I just set the rear bag down and then set my binos on top of the rear bag. I was able to get a steady spot to range. Now here at 660 yards, again, the data they spit out was identical. Pretty cool that the applied ballistics in the Vectronics matches the applied ballistics in the Fire 4000. That's a good thing. If they were vastly different, I'd be wondering setup-wise what happened in there, because they should be very similar. Now, kind of cool, at this point, the Vectronics actually allows you to store two windage numbers. So for instance, I put in, I want to say something like an 8-mile-an-hour wind and a 12-mile-an-hour wind, and that gives me two wind numbers. So basically, I can bracket my target with those two wind numbers, depending on what I think is happening downrange. So I really like the ability in these to store two windage numbers and bracket. Something like this Fire 4000, or I've got a couple of other weapon-mounted laser rangefinders. And as far as I know, all the ones I've used all only store one windage number. Now, something else you could notice here at this distance, your weapon-mounted laser rangefinder is attached to your rifle scope. So you're able to range with whatever your rifle scope is for magnification. So in this case, I'm ranging with 10x. Now here at 660 yards, a full-size IPSC, wide open space, really no problem. But maybe you're trying to take a longer range shot on a smaller target. That's where you're able to range with the maximum magnification of your optic. Now that's cool, and I would say that's a pro of the weapon-mounted laser rangefinder. Yes, you have the ability to range with your full range of magnification on your rifle scope. But you saw there at the 800-yard line, the Vectronics, they have the ability to magnification up also. So these are 12 power right now as they sit, 12 by 42. When I install those range extenders, now I have 17 power. And it's pretty slick that they have two different reticles in there. Again, those are etch reticles that you can use. One for 12 power, one for 17 power. All I had to do was install it, and you can see the difference here. And then refocus, and boom, I have the ability to increase magnification. That's the first time I've ever been able to increase magnification on a handheld ranging unit. So really cool pro to the Vectronics. 17 power on the top end, especially with the fine reticle that these have, is going to give you the ability to range some pretty fine targets. Now that right there is pretty slick. The other thing we did at 800 and some odd yards was shoot a mock stage. And in that mock stage, I just dropped down and put about 10 rounds onto the full-size IPSC out at 800 yards. And in this case, I think we saw a little bit of a difference here. So when I went down prone, got the rifle into position, ranged it, boom, I'm already in a shooting position. So when I got my range, it was easy for me to hold over and make that first shot. The range finding binos, again, you saw me take that Fulcrum bag and just set it right here on top of my optic, which historically I found works well. And then I just braced my binos off of that like this. Again, very steady, and it worked for ranging out at distance. Again, the solution we got out of both units was the same. And you saw me make a number of hits out at distance. So I would say the applied ballistics in both of these worked well. The Fire 4000, I had to input weather off my phone. Seemed to work just fine. The weather station on this, again, spit out the exact same data. Now, wind and weather really hasn't changed that much today, so it's been pretty steady. But out there at 880 yards, when you get out that far, that's where you're going to see differences in weather, BC, that kind of thing. So for both these units to spit out the same number, I thought that was a win, and I'm happy with that. But once I ranged using the binos off of the rear bag, then I had to move the rear bag down behind the rifle, get the rifle position to shoot. So it was a little bit more clumsy in that application. Now, with that in mind, let's talk about just pros and cons of each unit. So let me just list a couple of the pros that come to mind for the weapon-mounted laser rangefinder. Very steady, ability to magnify throughout the full range of your rifle optic. That's the biggest thing right there for me. The ability to zero it. Maybe you're going to run a night vision device, clip on. Now you have the ability to range after dark with that. Those are the key things that come to mind for a weapon-mounted laser rangefinder. The con to me of a weapon-mounted laser rangefinder is, number one, it's attached to your rifle. So say you're shooting a match with a bunch of different people and you want to look at something, you can't just point your rifle at that thing. Versus a handheld unit like this, a Pro is, it's not attached to a rifle. So you can point it at literally anything and look at it, range it. Again, this one a lot more flexible. The other thing about a weapon-mounted laser rangefinder, again, attached to a rifle. So maybe you have a number of different rifles that you want to shoot at to distance. Well, you'd have to move this unit around and then re-zero it to all of those rifles. That's a negative. The other negative, say you store this in a safe, look how tall this thing is. Now I like how tall the Night Force mount is. You could get this closer. But maybe if I want to run a PVS-27 night vision on this, which I might try to do tonight, I need that to be able to get up and over the PVS-27. So it's tall. But when you put this in a safe, now this thing sticks way out into your safe and takes up space. I know that one's goofy, but that is something I've noticed on all of these weapon-mounted laser rangefinders. Versus the handheld unit right here, you can throw this in like a little chest harness rig. You can tote it with you. Maybe you're going to go do something other than shoot. Well, you can take this with you. So the flexibility, ease of use, onboard weather station, this thing is an absolute must in my opinion. So how do I wrap up my opinion of each of these units? Well, you think about what I've got going on here. This weapon-mounted laser rangefinder and the other units in the market, especially when you pair it with a mount, say $2,000, $2,500 for this solution, plus your optic. This thing's another, say, $1,200 to $1,500, $2,000, depends on what you're running. This solution can get very expensive. Yes, these Vectronic Vector X's are also very expensive. So as they sit right here, they're about $2,800, $2,900. You put the range extenders in, that's another $600. There's an Area 419 ARCA plate that you can put in for another $150. So you're looking at $3,500 for this unit. So really neither of these would be a, say, cheap, really affordable solution. This is for the guy that's really serious about putting rounds down range. And I tell you what, for me, they're both worth the money. So why that is, practical rifle shooting, you got to have the ability to range the target, pull in that weather information, get your ballistic calculator. These, regardless of which solution it is, simplify that process. Ability to range and calculate all in one unit or on the rifle makes things so much quicker and easier. You're going to be shocked at how a nice setup like this will allow you to improve your shooting. So in my opinion, is one better than the other? It depends on the application. Yes, they definitely both have their pros and cons. Which one would I buy first? That's a hard question to answer because it depends on the shooting that you are doing and maybe the rifles that you're trying to run it on. If I only had one precision rifle that I wanted to shoot out to distance, maybe I go weapon-mounted laser rangefinder. If I have multiple different rifles that I'm shooting out to distance, maybe a carbine that I want to push out, a precision rifle, an ELR rifle, that's where the handhelds could make sense because they're so flexible and you can instantly pair them with multiple rifles easily. So with that, let's conclude. If you enjoyed this video, I thank you for sticking around and watching. I appreciate your support. If you like the kind of content, do me a solid and hit that subscribe button. Again, I'm trying to get to 100,000. I appreciate each and every one of you that are subscribed. And if you're not watching this video, do me a solid and help me get there by subscribing. Finally, check out my next video. I know it's coming soon. Thanks for watching.